Hey everyone, so this episode was recorded pre-pandemic in February, and so if you're wondering why there's no references to COVID-19 and the zombie apocalypse and and baking sourdough bread and needing a haircut, that's why. Please enjoy this episode of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
And welcome to the most excellent 80s movies podcast. It's the podcast where a filmmaker and a comedian make their way through the 80s movies we think we love or love to hate with these, our grown-up modern eyes, to see how they hold up and so on and so forth. And of course, this movie has it all, including a 1-minute scene where the word fuck is said 18 times. This is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, a movie selection from 1987.
During holiday travel, some people get delirious, some get delayed, and some get Del Griffin.
American Light and Fixture, Director of Sales, Shower Curtain Ring Division.
Neil Page got all three.
I was on my way home to spend a nice holiday with my family. Instead, I'm in a motel bed with a stranger.
So instead of Thanksgiving with his family, he's spending 3 days with the turkey.
Happy clams just whistling down the road.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the Marconi family.
Paramount Pictures presents
Wilma!
Steve Martin.
Ever been to Hawaii?
Yeah.
You see Don Ho while you were there?
See the second show, that's the best one.
Is that right?
Yeah.
John Candy.
Why are you holding my hand? Where's your other hand? Between two pillows. Those aren't pillows.
In a new film by John Hughes. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
See that Bears game last week? Yeah, hell of a game, hell of a game.
It's been a while.
Has it?
Yeah, I haven't seen this one in a while.
Okay. Do you think of it as a holiday movie?
Yeah, it's weird. Like if you go to Amazon, the thumbnail makes it look like a Christmas movie.
It really does.
Yeah, but he's racing home to get to Thanksgiving.
Yep.
You know, I'm not sure what you would do with the box art and give them a bunch of pilgrim hats. There's not a lot of Thanksgiving movies that you can kind of like do other than just show a bunch of people eating turkey
And having, passive aggressive.
Right.
argument.
Getting all the family together, like home for the holidays or
Yeah.
something like that.
Or Christmas Vacation.
I guess I think of it as a Christmas era zone. I mean, like a holiday zone. Getting home for the holidays.
Having to eat. Yeah, it's one of those things that I always hate it in like the movies where everybody's sitting down and having like a passed plate dinner. Like that's never, it's always a buffet. Nobody sets that shit on the table. Anyway, I'm Krissy Lenz, the improviser, comedian, director of National Comedy Theater, the comedian of this podcast.
And I'm Nathan Blackwell, filmmaker. I'm the one who will be pointing out plot structure and other movies and lens choices.
Yay! Okay. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I feel like this movie is on TV basically all the time. But like the edited version or no?
So my being an early cord cutter mainly for financial reasons, not philosophical reasons. I have no idea nowadays, and also you've got kids, and I'm married to being single. Apparently,
Congratulations!
Thank
Where are
you.
you registered?
Yeah, Target. So I have no idea what is on TV these days because I just do Netflix or iTunes.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, me too. I feel like in my youth this was on a lot. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is we were talking about this off mic, but this is like our third road movie comedy.
Yeah.
An unplanned theme.
Yes.
But it's interesting to see how Adventures of Babysitting, which in a lot of ways is more of a crazy night kind of movie, but in a kind of a cousin to the road movie.
Yes.
And then we've got Twins, and then we've got Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's interesting how that type of movie was popular, but also how it can be done differently.
Yeah. Well, and then again, akin to Twins, this movie seems to be like already like wants you to get the premise right away that like, oh my God, can you imagine being trapped with John Candy and with this character of a guy for 3 days? No one would want that. Who's everyone's favorite grumpy curmudgeon? Let's get Steve Martin on the case. And you're just supposed to understand, even from the trailer, like, the worst thing that could happen to you is having to hang out with this guy. And that's sort of in Home Alone, too. And Kevin McAllister's mom has to ride home with John Candy, who's the polka king of the Midwest. In this, he's a shower curtain ring salesman, but you're just supposed to be like, oh my God, he's larger than other people and louder than other people. And I don't know, like that piece of the premise just doesn't hold up because he seems so charming and lovable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, you know, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. This is really a comedy about social norms.
Yeah.
And as a young person who maybe hadn't traveled, you start to learn what some of these social norms are by this kind of like comedy version of it, you know, stuff like what is coach in first class?
Yeah.
Like what, you know, things about like, again, social norms, like taking your shoes off or socks off on an airplane.
Getting a cab in New York
Cab
City.
etiquette, right. Sharing a bed, which is something you sometimes have to do as an adult. It doesn't come up that often, but it's, you know, these are low stakes, but it's stuff that kind of are pressure points that traveling does to you. You know, that fear of being robbed in a hotel, like getting getting a ride from a stranger, like who picks up the bill, you know, freeway driving. Like these are the things that like
car explosions.
Yeah. If the legacy of this movie was like, was watching this movie as a kid and then applying these concepts later as an adult, it's like, oh yeah, let's, you know, there might be someone who I better hide my wallet because just like in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I don't want someone like stealing it or like, you know, like
I don't want to get my Diners Card Club mixed up with your Diners Club card.
Again, very low stakes, but just writing that line of being charming, you know.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot in this that to me seems like you could watch this movie and use its lessons in a lot of like improv scenes, right? Because it is sort of that, are they arguing with each other? Is it an internal conflict between these two characters? Or is it an external conflict between the situation that they're in?
Right.
And it's like, it's a mix of both in this movie. But I think you're supposed to think that John Candy is unlikable and annoying. And the shoes thing, let's not take our shoes off on a plane. Putting your underpants in the sink, that's not cool. But everything else he does is lovely. Everything else he does is like genuine and kind. And I love his like colloquialisms. He's always like, $6 and my right nut says we're not getting on that plane.
Yeah, very Canadian.
Yes. You know, we got a better chance of playing pickup sticks with our butt cheeks and a three-legged ballerina and like all of these really funny sayings and expressions.
And then also you could have pushed it even further with Steve Martin being a curmudgeon. He's not. He just has to get home.
Yeah.
And so everything is an inconvenience. And so what you have here is, and then John Candy, I think they knew that he was charming.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's built in there. He's just, you know, it's not like he's the worst. He's just always inconvenient to someone who is inconvenienced.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thought there was a missing piece too of like, there was something missing of what the stakes are for him to get home. He keeps calling his wife, but she's not mad at him. Right. It's not like that thing where he's like, oh my God, she's so upset, I've disappointed her.
It's a second viewing stakes kind of thing. Like, so spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, we're now entering this end twist spoiler.
It's been over 30 years.
The Sixth Sense spoiler alert. So John Candy, Steve Martin's trying to get home.
Yeah, so that's the whole premise of the movie is that
John Candy is also trying to get home, but we don't know.
To Chicago from New York.
Right, exactly. But we don't know that John Candy's wife actually passed away years ago, and he actually doesn't have a home. So there's not much. We think that there's stakes, but the second time around, we realize that new layer that the only stakes is actually trying to hang on to a friend.
Yeah, trying to make a friend. And yeah, there are hints and like the little things that they drop throughout the movie where like the first time I watched it, I remember thinking, oh, the wife has left him.
Yeah.
Or the wife is gonna leave him, and that's why he's trying not to get home.
Yeah.
But you do get that sort of underlying sense that...
Or he killed his wife and he's now running from the law.
He's on the lam.
Right.
But I don't think they give you the sense that like Steve Martin's in hot water. Like his wife seems pretty chill.
Yeah.
Like his family seems great. You don't even get the sense that he's like a workaholic.
Yeah, it's that stress. It's a very realistic kind of stress that you get, that I'm going to miss Thanksgiving. But
if this is the only time you've ever missed Thanksgiving, it's because you're like literally risking life and limb to get home. Like,
right.
You're fine. Like,
right. But in real life, you would be so fucking stressed about that. Like, and then there's also just that capital that you get as a significant other of making a promise and then letting them down, and then just like,
and I'm here with the whole family holding down the fort.
And he's also thinking like it's so stressful that, you know, I'm not there when I promised to be there, but I will never let this live this down.
Yeah.
You know,
and I'm not, and like I'm trying so hard to get there, but like there's that bit of this too, which is like everywhere they go sucks. And everything they do is like sort of interlaced with this like terrible travel. Like, isn't travel terrible? Don't you hate this? Aren't other people the worst? Like,
it's so he the flight gets bumped, and he eventually gets a new flight. He had a first class ticket, and then he gets bumped to coach. And I'm thinking, first class problems.
Yeah, seriously. And The thing that always sort of bothered me about this movie too is that Steve Martin doesn't start out sweet and become bitter. Like, he's rude to that lady. He's already stressed out. Like, from the moment you meet him and at that meeting, he's impatient. You know, I don't know. Like, we have seen him sort of disintegrate? He sort of starts at a 9 and then goes to a 10.
Yeah,
you know. But this movie is also, like, improv-wise, just a lesson in heightening, right?
Yeah.
It's like...
I mean, Steve Martin... And I was really interested because Steve Martin has a very broad style of comedy.
Yeah.
And John Hughes usually does a very understated comedy. So I'm interested in how they got along, or how Steve Martin would integrate into one of these kind of stories. So this is John Hughes later in his career. Not super late. I mean, at this point, like... So what, it was Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's, then this movie. And then at this point, and then after that, like, the classics kind of stop, you know? Like, She's Having a Baby and, like, Curly Sue and that kind of stuff. But, I mean, these were only a year after each other or so. Like, when was the Breakfast Club? Like, 82?
I think it was 89. I mean, we did it on this podcast, so I can't remember anything.
I'm going to say
85.
85. Oh, jeez. So this is 87.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that only 2 years have passed since then.
Yeah. But Steve Martin has that, like, that goofy, like, goofy broadness.
So you automatically like him.
Super curmudgeon.
Yeah. You automatically like him. And it's that fine line of, like, what's written on the page and then how it meets with casting. Like, he definitely is a likable person who's at stress level 9 when we first meet him.
Yep.
But yet we still give him the benefit of the doubt, even if he makes some bad choices.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting. It's like he lays into John Candy and says the worst things
at the very beginning.
Like at 28 minutes into the movie.
On their first night together.
Yeah, and it's interesting because usually you would have that like towards the end, and then they've got to come back together and they've got to love each other. But this, they clearly established like their positions, and I think the important thing of why you would have that at 30 minutes into the movie is John Candy, although deeply hurt, stands up for himself and he says, "I like myself."
Yeah, I thought that is my favorite part of the movie, where he's like, you know, you may be right about all that, but I like me, and my wife likes me, and my clients like me, and I'm not going to change so I can be more like you.
Right. Like my writer friend and I call that's the talking pie. Like that's the
what?
That's the heart. It's like in The Simpsons, like Ron Howard, they were doing a movie. It's like you can't cut out the talking pie. That's the heart of the movie.
Yes.
And so now we refer as the heart of the movie as the talking pie. So you can't. So that's also when like the music swells up and it doesn't return again until the very end when Steve Martin realizes that John Candy doesn't have a home.
In a very, like, to liken it to The Sixth Sense is entirely accurate, because he's riding on the train, like, having finally on his way home, and he's putting it together. Like, he's seeing the scenes flash through his mind, imagining his Thanksgiving dinner, and then being like, wait a minute, didn't he say that one thing? It is like The Sixth Sense, and then he's like, oh no, and he has to race back and get him and bring him home.
Yeah.
Which is a really, like, sort of beautiful moment. He starts at 9 and he just goes up and up and up and up from there.
Yeah.
And just getting more and more exasperated, and it's like, oh God, now we're on a bus. Now we're in the back of this truck. Now we're this. Now we're that. There are moments where he tries to soften, where he's like, when he tries to sing with the people on the bus, and they're like, nobody knows his song.
3 coins and a fountain.
And everyone's like, what? And they like John Candy better. So, they do. Like, the world likes John Candy better than the world likes Steve Martin in this story, because he's, like, selling his...
and it's not, again, it's not even, like, upstairs, downstairs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like John Candy is a very kind of normal blue-collar dude. And then Steve Martin is just one step removed, that he's got, like, a 2-story house.
And a first-class ticket.
Exactly.
Yeah. The scene where John Candy is selling the rings, the shower curtain rings, as like various other things, is like, has to be improv. It's really hilarious. It's like one of the best parts of the whole movie, with the things that he makes up that the shower curtain rings are. And like, he's creating a lot of their problems, but he's also solving them. But yeah, so this movie, like, we talked about Twins, how the writers were just like, you need another thing? Okay, great. There's a bomb in the trunk or whatever. This movie is like such a gradual sense of heightening.
Yeah.
What would be slightly worse? What would be slightly worse?
Exactly. So we're like, Adventures of Babysitting falls on its face. And Twins struggles, and it's obvious, but it's still charming. Like, it still lands. Like, John Hughes does such a great job of just finally tuning in, just kind of like a master chef of how heightened, how dramatic, how, unimportant these moments are. Yeah. Even though, the movie is, even though it's only 90 minutes, it's kind of slow.
It is, in parts.
And we can talk about, like, the difference between modern attention spans or not, but I mean, Twins zipped by, in my opinion. So
Twins was kind of long.
Yeah, Twins was longer than this.
Yeah.
It's just that you have more quiet moments, I think, in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I thought he did such a great job it's like you live and die by the quality of these gags and sequences.
Yep.
If effectively you're just going from A to B, we know we're basically in for a series of events that in some ways are not important. It's like the journey is more important than the destination, you know? There's not much plot other than they have obstacles to get to the one place they're going to go.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of their obstacles, if we want to talk about like could you remake this movie today? There'd be a lot you'd have to change because a lot of the obstacles are that they can't call because the payphone's in use, right?
Yeah.
Or there's just no car going that way.
Yeah.
They don't know how to ask for a ride.
I think actually you'd have to change some of the stuff, but I think there'd be surprisingly very little in terms of some of these obstacles, because I think we're like on Facebook, we see all the time, it's like, you know, an airplane is left for 6 hours on the runway and then, oh, this is canceled because of this. Like, I think all these like transportation delays and all these kind of like, you know, breakdowns of the convenient American system,
Right.
still are super prevalent.
The travel frustration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if anything, everyone is even more aware of it, of like, oh, I rented this thing online and it's not there, and they told me, oh yeah, we gave that away.
Oops.
Because you know, it's like, we gave that away yesterday. It's like, but I had a reservation in the computer. It's like, I can't find it in the computer. Here's a printout. Well, I'm sorry, but it's gone. Like that.
Yeah.
That seems to me.
So.
Yeah, I feel
Would
like with
you
the
be
advent,
interested in that?
the advent of computers, these things happen even
Sure.
more.
Yeah, and like, but all the problems in this are from it being very analog. They don't have, they can't get money. You know,
this is not a great idea. It's a low stakes, low concept idea, but it's 100% execution. It's John Hughes, it's Steve Martin, and it's John Candy.
Right.
Like inherently, there is nothing special about this idea other than the execution. Because again, it's very low stakes stuff, like getting a weird cab driver and then struggling to pay a motel, you know, fee.
Oh, that was another thing too that made me think, like, you know, you can see the roots of improv, and of course, like, John Candy is a you know, legendary Second City person, that he knows everyone he encounters. Like, he either already has a personal relationship with them, or he creates an instant personal relationship. He's on a first name basis with the guy at the motel. They have a like shtick that they do, but even when he meets someone new, nobody's a stranger to him. Everybody has some sort of stakes to their relationship because to him it matters. And that's such a hard thing to teach people sometimes, because you get a lot of characters that are like the Steve Martin of this movie, where they're nonchalant, they don't care, like we could set you on fire and walk away, right? Whereas John Candy is the opposite. He cares so much. And like, we all need to be more like John Candy and care a lot about the people that we encounter. Because the other thing this movie teaches us is the power of like these seemingly low status characters have all the power over you. They have the power.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
the person who works the front desk at the motel, he has power over you. The lady who decides whether or not you go to first class or stay and coach, you know, the lady who is the Principal Rooney's secretary
at the rental car company.
Yeah, she has all the power. So be nice, for God's sake. Yeah.
Again, Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Be nice. Thank you, Patrick. You're
Thank
all
you,
we ever
Roadhouse.
need. You're all we ever need.
We should have just ended the podcast there.
Yeah. Be nice. Because, and that's like, you know, that the reason that this movie is rated R and not PG-13 is because at that very, like, it is height of exasperation. Steve Martin, he keeps trying to ditch John Candy, and it's like, stop trying to ditch John Candy. But he finally gets away. He's supposed to rent a car. The car's not there, so he has to walk across the freeway and the tarmac. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Where the planes drive, to get back to yell at Principal Rooney's secretary about how there was no car and he's almost dead, and he's like so mad and he reserved it and blah, 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 blah. And she's just like, that's the 1 minute scene where he says fuck 18 times. And she's like, I guess you're fucked. That's good. That's such a good part. Because if he had been nice, I feel like she probably would have tried to help him.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my improv heightening nonchalance rant. There's so many bits in this movie that it's hard to even pick out ones to talk about.
I mean, the classic one is That's no pillow.
Yeah. Where they instantly are like, oh, we have to lower our voices and talk about sports because we accidentally cuddled.
Yeah.
It made me think of that. It made me think of that Friends episode where Joey and Ross start taking naps together because they like to cuddle. And it's like, I'm so glad that that's less of a thing now. It's like you're allowed to have guy friends and cuddle and take naps. But I get that they were also strangers, and he was like sleeping in a puddle of beer.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of like the, I felt like it was a very soft and understandable version. Like there's not like a gay panic moment. Right. It's that I'm literally being spooned by a stranger who's got his hands up my butt, and they're like, "Ooh, you seen that sports game? Okay, great. Yeah. Moving on." You know, as opposed to like some movies I can think of where it's just like,
way worse.
Yuck, gross, what the fuck?
Yeah. Now we must die.
Yeah.
But I think I think what would be interesting would be like to take a quiz, right? A trivia quiz where you have to put the events of this movie in the order that they happen. Yeah. I don't think anyone could pass, even having just watched it yesterday.
Yeah, like Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Exactly.
It's like I could think of like 9 great moments.
Yeah.
But I might not get them perfectly in order.
Right. Well, because they're in the back of a super weird guy who's like wants his pregnant wife to pick up the trunk. They're in the back of his car with an angry dog. They're in the back of a semi truck with like frozen turkeys or something. They're
pulled over by the cops. They're driving the wrong way.
Oh my god, that's the best part, when they're driving the wrong way on the highway. Oh, and I thought that was the most relatable part too, is when John Candy is at the wheel and he's trying to take his jacket off.
Yeah.
And he gets stuck.
Yeah, it gets hooked on the seat adjustment knob, and then he struggles to get the other one, tries to pull his jacket off, and the other end gets hooked. And so he literally has both arms tied back behind him, and he's driving with his legs
and then
his thighs.
They survive, but they end up on the wrong side of the freeway. And that poor sweet couple's like, for God's sake!
It's this with just like any John Hughes movie, like the supporting cast is so good and so memorable, and they give her. It's like, yes, it's important to like in the scene to have someone performing, but it's also just as important to have someone listening.
Yes, and I thought that was such a beautiful lesson of this movie too. And it's in that first blow up scene where John Candy says like, yeah, I guess I talk a lot, but you know what else? I also listen a lot. And there's another improv lesson for you. Like Steve Martin doesn't learn to listen until the end. Like he really doesn't think about anybody's predicament except his own until the very end. And like John Candy is like making that connection to sort of everyone and everything. Right. So that's kind of what the about of the movie is, maybe, that we should listen more than we state our own case.
The great thing about movies is that you can kind of say that every movie has the theme of no man is an island.
Yeah.
And it's about human connections.
Yeah. Well, and you're not even made to believe that Steve Martin was like distant from his family, or like he loves his family. He loves his wife.
Yeah.
He's not a bad dad or a bad husband. He's just a bad traveler. He's just bad at traveling.
It's a lot of it is just bad luck. Like, I mean,
could happen to anyone.
It's not really until he hits the roof that he starts making bad decisions
and getting himself punched in the face.
Honestly, like a lot of the story is also just about rolling with it. Just like John Candy says, you just got to roll with it because
slow.
Yeah, because there's so many times that they make the situation worse by how they react to it. And try to fight against it, and then towards,
and it's always like Steve Martin trying to get away from John Candy.
Yeah, and then towards the end, they get pulled over by the cops. And then they're just like, oh, okay, well, let's just let's get a ride from someone.
Yeah,
and it's you'd think at this point, like it's kind of the point to the climax, like they've already had like their toughest thing happen. Which is like the car melting, and the freeway, and then his wallet was in the car, and this super low point. And so we're still like 20 minutes, 15 minutes before the end. And instead of like this next thing is now raising the bar even higher. They get pulled over by the cops. It's just kind of like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay, we'll just roll with it.
Yeah.
And then we just show them getting out of the courthouse. The car is taken. And it's like, well, what do we do next? Oh, we got a ride. Okay, let's go.
Yep. Off we go.
Yeah.
Let's see what the next thing is that happens.
Yeah. And then the story then becomes about getting home is actually not so bad, not so hard. Mm-hmm. He's now on a train. And then he realizes that John Candy, again, the Sixth Sense moment, doesn't have a home. And Steve Martin is practically home, but he takes the train all the way back to find John Candy.
Yeah. And it's also like the instinct to force the situation to be the way that you think it should be instead of just letting it be what it is and learning to like have that sort of zen, like, I'm going to be in this moment and not be like, no, I have to be first class. It's like that tension of like, no, it has to be this. It has to be, which is so 80s, right? It has to be right. It has to be good. It has to be first class. It has to be a nice cab. It has to be a nice hotel. It has to be, everything has to be to my liking, to my standard. There's no way that I could associate with this type of person or ride in this type of car because that's not who I am. And it's like, sometimes you can just chill. Mm-hmm. Just chill. Like, yeah. It's fine.
It's like the convenience that we're all promised by spending money.
Yes.
And participating in our system. Mm-hmm. In life, many times the system breaks down and you just got to be cool with it, Mm-hmm. It's like anytime you travel, like, you might have like 8 things you want to do and you can only get to 3 of them.
Yeah.
Because someone's tummy is sick.
Yeah.
You got to deal with that. And it's like, okay, well.
Or the weather is weird or something that completely unpredictable has happened. Mm-hmm. Like something is broken. Like
yeah. I always make this analogy of like, so I used to work at the Phoenix Zoo and there would like be these parents. So it's like, we have to see all animals.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong way to do it. Like a checklist, like you're just barely spending any time, and the better way to do it is to experience it more, to imagine just like if you're going to a foreign country, assume that you're going to return at some point. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to like do everything. Like we're going to see all these things. Instead, it's better to enjoy these moments, to experience a moment with the bobcat.
Yeah.
And to take in the scenery. And maybe you're not going to get to the rhino because the rhino was hiding or, is in its night house, mm-hmm. and just trying to experience the quality over the quantity.
Yeah. Because
sometimes that pursuit of that other goal actually makes you not enjoy the entire experience.
Yeah. Beautifully said, Nathan. And of course, the best way to do the Phoenix Zoo is just to hang out with those stingrays the entire day.
Honestly, the best way is to just get a membership. Honestly, if you go 3 times, it pays for itself.
It pays for itself.
And then you don't have to do the whole thing. You can just go for a couple hours, do a part.
Just go look at those giraffes and then head home.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure this applies to any zoo.
It really does.
That offers memberships. Really, find a good zoo that's got a good conservation program. Support them.
Yeah. So I'm like a super easy person to travel with, because as long as we're having fun, like I don't care what we're doing, and like, but I get stressed when other people get stressed. Like I get super stressed when other people are like, but this isn't that, and I need to eat, and I won't eat this, and I won't eat that, and I have to. We didn't here, and I'm there, and this doesn't, that gives me anxiety because I'm like, hey, like, it's cool, like. I once got stuck at the Seattle airport for like 4.5 hours. And I was like, well, this is really neat. I'm going to see this entire airport. I'm going to go in every shop.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it.
No.
It's like, so the way I travel is generally I try to like, to a certain degree, maximize like the adventure. So I'm exhausted at the end of a vacation. But I totally understand that it's, again, you're pursuing these experiences. You can't do everything, and you just have to go.
Not with that attitude.
You got you even if you're trying to do a lot, that you just got to understand that, you're still a biological machine that can only do so much. It's not, to me, it's not about accomplishment. It's about all the different stories and experiences, I won't, again, it's like, I'll have things that I want to do on these days, but it'll be very loose, you know?
But it is that expectation of comfort, right? It's that expectation that we're always going to be exactly having everything we need.
And for sure. And I can totally relate of like, dude, I spent like $150 for this stupid hotel, and like the sheets are like, smell like bleach, and I can't sleep, and there's no air conditioning. It's the hottest day in LA. It's like, I'm just going nuts. And you do feel a little indignant because you spent this money and you made this trip to kind of like take a vacation and relax. And,
stand in front of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Yeah.
Turn and face me.
I get it.
Yeah.
But I think that the key to this movie, and it's such a John Hughes, like, he just had that magic, man, where he could like have these really beautiful like lessons and these moments that are so well acted, so well, how would you say, like, directed,
dialed in,
yeah.
Just like again, it's like that tightrope of
huge moments
tone.
of comedy, like in the same movie where you get that really beautiful moment of like, you know, adult male friendship. You also get a car exploding after it's gone the wrong way down the freeway, and then eventually backing into a building. Yeah, with the two of them sitting in the front seat, like looking very disheveled, wearing like a woman's scarf, and like just singing together. Like, those things existing in the same movie is so nice. And I'm sure that people are still achieving that balance today, but I don't know that you can. To me, this is what I think too. Is like a movie can be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like, and
harsh and tense, but still beautiful and light.
Yeah, it's not common as much anymore. Like I think of things like Jojo Rabbit, which has that of just going like silly and then hard
and so serious. Yeah. But Taika Waititi is a genius who, in generations from now, we're all going to look back and realize. But, you know, and it's hard to talk about movies. It's hard, even 80s movies, like, it's hard to talk about the ones that are this good, except for to say, like, stop being a dick, everybody, you know. Even like the people stealing each other's cabs, that to me is like, it gives me so much anxiety. Just to be like,
again, this is a comedy of social norms.
It is,
you know?
Yeah. And Kevin Bacon stealing the cab, because I'm always the John Candy person who's like, oh, there's a cab right here. Like,
I'm so sorry.
Hop in this cab. Oh shit! I did not see this whole drama playing out behind me of like Kevin Bacon and Steve Martin fighting for this cab. Yeah. Like, I was just like, yay, a cab.
Oh, one cab, please.
Yes.
Yay.
But I do
I'm
think
from
it's like
out of town.
Slightly absurd that like John Candy has just been for 8 years riding the rails like a hobo. Like, well, he's just been nonstop traveling.
I think he still has his job, but he doesn't have a home. So he's able to just barely support himself through favors and things like that of still selling. I can't imagine shower curtain rings being
and they're not
that
even
lucrative.
Special. Yeah, they're not even special shower curtain rings.
Right.
They're not even decorative. They're just clear plastic. All right. So on a scale of 1 plane through 10 trains or automobiles, how many
vehicles of transportation?
How many vehicles? You know, they were never on bikes, and they were never on scooters.
I appreciate.
Yeah. How many planes, trains, and or automobiles?
I think I'm gonna go with a 7. It's high, but at the same time, I don't know. There's some things preventing me from going higher than that. You know.
Yeah.
But there's definitely so many classic moments in it.
Yes.
For sure. And
I feel like it's a well-known movie, and it's like exactly the same conversation that we had about Twins. Like, it's good, it's funny, it's watchable, but the thing that makes me push it more towards 6 and away from 7 is that I feel like I could take or leave it. There are other movies where I can get that same sense of warmth. There are other movies where I could get that same sense of fun. And this isn't a movie where if someone's like, oh, I've never seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, I've got a show too.
You simply can't go on. Like, you know, it isn't that. You could even just see the funniest parts from this and be fine. So yeah, I mean, I guess unknowingly that's my criteria. Is like, how badly do I have to force this movie on other people?
And that just goes down to personal subjectivity and preference of like, what does this mean to me? And that's, I mean, we're not academics, and even critics are subjective.
Yeah,
you know, who have to give it star ratings and things like that. So, yeah, I dig it. Yeah, that's it's kind of the same thing. It's really a gut thing of like, where does it land in terms of my love, my favorites, things like that.
What do you think about, like, I mean, I feel like this movie, if you boil it down to what it is, like, has been remade a bunch of times. Like, there's the one with Zach Galifianakis and Robert Downey Jr., where he's trying to get home in time to
due date.
Yeah. So, like, I feel like this movie has existed in other forms.
Yeah.
But
have to get home for the holidays.
Have to get home, can't get home. I don't know. Do you think there is like a right now equivalent of a Steve Martin and a John Candy? I mean, obviously no one is Steve Martin or John Candy, but do we have that equivalent today?
I don't know.
Who would Taika Waititi cast?
Yeah, I don't know. I struggle.
Yeah, me too. I couldn't come up with it.
I'm sure as soon as I'm driving home, I'll think of.
You'll think of it.
I'll think of a dozen, because this isn't. It's a reoccurring story of like
lovable curmudgeon.
It is the Odyssey.
Yeah,
you know, I must go from A to B, and
it's like, but it's like larger than life positivity. Somebody who has zero fucks. They are who they are. They are unashamed. When we as the audience feel they should be ashamed, you know, like Rumor Willis. No, that's not her name. Who am I thinking of? She's blonde. She's in Pitch Perfect. Her first name is Rebel Wilson.
Rebel Wilson.
Not Rumor Willis.
Right.
Rebel Wilson has that, where she is unashamed of who she is, and we as the audience
you could do
feel like she's supposed
you could do Anna Kendrick and Rebel Wilson.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They make a great team anyway. We did it. Nathan, get on that.
All right, hang
After
on.
my Twins limited series, would you kindly give me Planes, Trains with Anna Kendrick and not Rumor Willis?
Okay.
Get Rumor Willis in there.
Rebel Wilson. Also in Jojo Rabbit.
Yes, also. Maybe that's why I'm thinking of her. Yeah. But yeah, it's that thing of like, I'm a proper person. I behave as proper people do. You are absurd.
Yeah, Identity Thief also strikes me as like a similar kind of road movie story where you've got Melissa McCarthy and Jason Bateman as the uptight one.
Yeah.
And then they've got the really just hamstrung killer bad guy plot of bad guys following them.
And I guess like Melissa McCarthy does have that sort of John Candy humor of like, I am what I am, and I'm not sad about it, which I like. So what would your deep cut, and I had a hard time, I'll be real. What would your deep cut recommendation be?
So my deep cut recommendation is, I don't think I've made it before, is Train Travel. Have I done that one before?
Possibly, but do it again.
If I have. So now I have a feeling like I've done this one before. But anyways, I recommend Train Travel like Amtrak.
Yeah.
Spend just a little extra money and you get a small compartment that you can share with like one other person. You know,
you can pretend you're at Hogwarts.
It's true. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What I'd recommend is not. So I went for like 52 hours. So 2 days and
on the train.
On a train on Amtrak from San Francisco to Chicago.
Did you get off the train at places?
No,
like a cruise where it docks and you have like.
There's a lot of stops on the way. So what I would recommend is that you do that, because I think about 36 hours. So one night is probably the best. So like if you got on San Francisco and you got out like at Denver, you know,
hang out for a little bit, get back on.
Yeah, get back. So it's tough to sleep on a train.
Is it?
So, because for logistic reasons. And
because someone's always trying to murder on the Orient Express you?
Yeah, and
they're
then
always trying to get
you've got to keep a knife close to you, and you're just on guard, and you can't get more than 4 hours
You're
of sleep.
like, is Poirot on this train? And if he is, get me off.
Yeah, And people start to get a little ripe at that point. There are showers, but it's dicey. You feel like a pinball.
So are you recommending this or
yes,
not?
but I'm recommending that
urging me away?
I'm recommending that you do 36 hours, so like one night, and then you do like a day in Denver or whatever, and then you get back on and you continue on to wherever you want to go.
Okay.
So it's a lot of fun.
So mine is also travel related. This is my recommendation. Get you a tablet.
A tablet.
Yeah. Get either like a Galaxy tab or an iPad, because this will save you in so many situations. Like download a couple of games, get your Netflix on there. Then you don't care if you get stuck somewhere for a little bit, because you have an infinite amount of things to do, right? And if you have a grumpy companion, give them your tablet. Let them play Candy Crush for a little bit until the tensions are eased, right? And we can all
These are
just
small,
relax a little
youthful
bit.
companions.
Sometimes, but you know what? Adults also adults also get a little grumpy. And I know for myself, if it's like I try to see every delay in, of course not if I'm driving, but if you are a passive passenger, as like, oh, is there another opportunity for me to watch a movie that I maybe wouldn't have watched if I had other things to do? I'm going to play a game that I don't take time to play, right? So get a tablet, just have it with you, or a coloring book, right? Have something with you so that a little delay isn't the end of the world.
Right. That's a good idea.
And also I was thinking, dude, where's my car? Because it's sort of like the same sort of thing. It's like a quest, but like these dudes are the ultimate go with the flow. And I haven't seen it in years, but I remember being like so happy about their positivity and just how much they love and support each other, that like their problems are never problems. Their problems are always opportunities. Yeah. Okay. Nice. So where can people find you, and what should they look at when they do?
So you can find my stuff at squishystudios.com and all the Facebooks, Instagrams, and whatnots under Squishy Studios. You can check out short films and web series and things like that.
You can find me at National Comedy Theater, NCT Phoenix Online, NCT Phoenix The Place. If you like improv, I will teach it to you if you are in the greater Phoenix area. And you can find all of Most Excellent Pod stuff at mostexcellentpod.com, Most Excellent Pod on the Instagrams and the Facebooks. Please like our podcast. Please, like, if you listen to it and you're
even if you don't rate or review us, just please like it.
In your heart.
We can feel it.
We can feel it. Yeah. It's sort of like in Twins where they start to feel each other. Like, we can feel you liking us. So please.
And we appreciate it.
We do. But also,
honestly, we're not super needy people, but like anything is nice, you know?
Do the technical bit though too, and give us that thumbs up, man. Just give it to us. We need it. We want it.
I think that concludes it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, hey, you know what? We sure do appreciate you. Thank you for listening. And while you're out there in the world, remember to keep the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. Those aren't pillows.